Today, we're going to talk about the U.S. Treasury doubling the buyback on their bonds and how that's affected gold and Bitcoin. And we're going to talk about the medical miracles going on in Moderna. So stay tuned. We got a lot to talk about. Hi, I'm Adam Anderson, owner and founder of WealthGuard Advisors.
Hello, I'm Blake Anderson, certified financial planner. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, so big moves in the market. We actually, just giving you an overview, we had 3 weeks in a row on the S&P 500 going up, and we just broke that trend for this last week. And we gave up about 2% on the marketplace on the S&P 500, that is, 500 top companies. So we had broken out into a new high. It seems to be pulling back. I'm not overly concerned about this. I know that we are coming into some seasonality. September is not generally a great month for the market, but July was supposed to be a great month for the market, and it wasn't. So what's that say about seasonality? That's really, who knows?
Yeah, I'm not that shocked if we have a little bit of seasonality blues here in the summer, towards the end of summer. It also is just a healthy pullback, but I think there are some macroeconomic factors that are driving this pullback. One is what's going on with the upping the buybacks. So despite the rates being held steady, we are seeing an increase in Treasury buybacks. And that's just something the government does to sort of balance the books and put pressure on interest rates without actually changing the overnight federal funds rate. So it's just a sort of a softer lever that they have to sort of control interest rates.
Yeah, and so I think it's great they're taking money off the long end, like 30-year notes, and focusing on shorter term notes, and it's bringing down the yield. So like your home mortgages would be affected by this, and lending and stuff like that is actually benefited by this. It also weakened the dollar, which made a lot of people a macro move towards gold, precious metals, and Bitcoin. Into an additional booster to that, President Trump met with cryptocurrency leaders in our nation with their Clarity Act, and it's much more friendly, regulatory light or type of towards cryptocurrencies. And so what do we see with that? We saw gold rally this last week. Actually, for the last almost 4 weeks, a huge rally, about 14%. And also Bitcoin, which has been a sleeper. So there's the Bitcoin Trust really coming out of that meeting with the other leaders in the cryptocurrency for about a 20+% jump. So is it time for us to jump back into the precious metals Bitcoin bandwagon, Blake?
I think these two are a little bit separate. Gold is obviously the traditional hedge against risk. And we did have the huge run up in gold. I don't know that we're poised for another huge run up like we had in 2023, 2024, 2025. I think this is more tied to just the weakening dollar, and we're just seeing this proportional response. I'm not seeing the continued push higher. Bitcoin's a little bit different. Obviously, it's a lot more new idea than gold, and so it's treated a little bit differently. And I just consider it even more speculative than the gold play is. But on the upside to that, more speculative means there's more room to this to run. And I'm seeing a lot of noise about the huge Bitcoin accumulation funds out there. Strategy investments, the big one, that they're talking, hey, now we're getting back in the buying mode here. And as a pure technical look at Bitcoin, when it hit 50% off its highs, I got myself a little position there, and then it did nothing for 2-3 months, and we're finally seeing some life in there. So yay, that's exciting for my portfolio. And not that it was a big position, but just something to watch for in this more speculative nature. We might see bigger moves in something like Bitcoin, more extended moves in something like Bitcoin than I expect to see in gold.
So they say that gold, silver is stores of value. It's where you store value, and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin is where you or transfers of value, where you could transfer. And what we're seeing is the technology, the blockchain technology that's behind these cryptocurrency, I think is where the real value is. If it becomes, it is a technology that will revolutionize financial markets in the future. So companies like Visa and Mastercard, which transfer value, like what cryptocurrency does, and they use the SWIFT program, which is like a little slower, but they are quickly adopting the blockchain technologies as this is going to be the future. And so for more stable companies like a Visa and a Mastercard, that's such banks of um, clients, that everyone uses it, right? We really see big moves on that. So here we'll look at Visa. We're seeing a nice move over the last 5 months upwards, and it's actually up about almost 3% today. Also, it was disclosed, although our president has a blind trust, he doesn't supposedly have any influence over what his advisors are buying for him. He is a large holder in Visa and MasterCard. So if that means anything to you, that is something to think about. So also the exchanges are moving to this blockchain technologies. So when we're trading stocks, it goes through a brokerage and back and forth between us. And we open up at 9:30 in the morning on the East Coast time, 6:30 here, and close at 4 there and 1 o'clock here on the West Coast. And so it's likely that we are going to be trading around the clock because the trades are going to be instantaneous from your account to another account because of the technology. So they're talking about that happening. They're in discussions about what it's going to look like to have 24-hour trading. For Blake and I don't know how we feel about that. Waking up 2 o'clock in the morning because pajama traders are cleaning our clocks. That doesn't sound very fun to me.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely having a huge impact. And if you're looking at these movements in gold or in Bitcoin, you're like, hey, I feel like I want to be a part of this. I think a company like Visa and a company like MasterCard is a better way to participate in a more stable manner. These companies, I had mentioned buying Bitcoin when it hit its 50% correction a couple months ago. Well, I've been in Visa for years now. For a long, long time, I've been in Visa. And I think for, the majority of investors, this is a much better place to be holding in the long run.
You know,
Not to mention Visa pays a dividend, and I guess Bitcoin kind of
right
some
there.
of them try and do that, but Visa pays a big dividend for gold and Bitcoin. You're not seeing that.
Blake and I had an experience with the client about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't know what it was, but we're talking about gold, and he wanted to buy gold, and we were having an issue where he wanted to sell off some of the stuff on his, and he had Visa, and he's had Visa for like the last 15 years. There's a 15-year chart. He's actually had it probably longer than that, and so we were looking at Visa compared to gold over that period of time. Let me just go back over here where you can see this. So here's like the last almost 15 years. That's a 1,300% gain on your investment, not to mention the dividends that Blake was just talking about that are paid out on a quarterly basis. The numbers are staggeringly off. I mean, the gold, I don't know if you remember what that was, Blake, but it was not even anywhere close to that number, not counting the dividend reinvestment. So anyways, for whatever that's worth. Hey, I want to talk about the medical miracles that are taking place in our economy and in our world today. So last week, we got news from Moderna. We kind of blew off Moderna because everyone hates them because they got a little PTSD from their vaccines from COVID era, the coronavirus vaccines. And so we've kind of laid off of Moderna, and it's also been a very volatile stock to own. So we've stayed away from it. But their technology continues to advance, and they're incorporating artificial intelligence. And one of the amazing things that they were able to do, and they let the results out last week, was that they're using artificial intelligence to identify tumors, specifically melanomas, and because there's so many different variations, like hundreds of them of these variations, but now they could really isolate what it is. They could generate a vaccine for it and treat it, and basically they're having a lot of success with just shrinking these tumors. They're basically gone. So, having had a relative of mine, my cousin, Scott Anderson, famous for making surfboards, died from a melanoma at age 56. It was pretty tragic for our family to lose my cousin. And that is something that I'm just like amazed that really our generation, or I probably won't have to worry about that because of this technology and how it's advancing so fast. And also our children probably will be something they just heard about. It's like hearing about polio, it's like it doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, it was really impressive digging into it. And, I think it was Wednesday last week they released it, or Thursday, and the stock jumped up 150% in a day. And I think it's totally deserved. Where currently, how this treatment works is that it's on after you've already been treated and are in remission for a melanoma, they could put you on this follow-up to prevent the reemergence of the melanoma cancer. And obviously, this is just the first step. They're looking into other types of cancer, even different types of melanoma, and making this more widespread. But it's pretty clear that this, or something very similar to this, will be the standard of care moving forward. And hopefully, they could even bring it for before you get any cancer, because this targets these specific mutations that cause it. And using these new mRNA vaccine technologies, it's very impressive what they're able to do, and very deserving that they got this 170% move in a day.
One
The
day.
company,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
very impressive what they were able to do.
Blake was watching the options. So some of those short-term call options were up 100,000% in craziness, unbelievable. So if we had a crystal ball, we could be very rich today. But we've kind of written off them because they have so much PTSD, like I said, around Moderna and the coronavirus at that. So, but still probably a great technology. I know there's some like related companies like Merck, which has Keytruda. A lot of people being treated for cancer with Keytruda, and with a lot of success. And so there's supposed to be some applications to that. Uh, Merck, is that what it is? Merck. So they also had a related bounce, not as significant, but 11% on the day. So healthcare, biotech, pharmaceuticals, seeing some life. Not too bad.
Yeah, so we were looking at the companies coming up with earnings this week. We are a little past peak earnings season, but there are still some big hitters. Obviously, Nvidia this week is going to be big news. We see if the AI play is still, get some updates on that from their earnings numbers. But another company I was looking at, it was, a little out of left field, not in the AI, not in, we talked about finance, we talked about healthcare. But this is just a retail company, Williams-Sonoma. They do home goods, not someone you often think of. But it, yeah, high-end home goods for sure. But I'm looking at their earnings as if the numbers are good, this could potentially be a good investment. They've been very strong the last 3-4 years. They have a 1.5% dividend. They've been holding strong for a long time. And I think this is a good position to be if you're looking for something a little less volatile, a little less every up and down in the market, but instead just a solid company to own.
Yeah, they are actually benefiting from artificial intelligence indirectly because their supply chains, their distribution, their marketing is all being augmented through the artificial intelligence implementation. And we're seeing that across the board. That's why earnings across the board, last week we talked about they were in the 87% of companies projected higher than expected earnings. And the normal is maybe the 70%. So it's way higher than normal. I think it's the highest ever that they've had. And it's because of companies implementing artificial intelligence into their supply chain, into their communications, into their marketing, into their, you name it. It's touching it all, and it's all becoming more efficient. So I'm sure that Williams Sonoma is benefiting from this. I have my little pick of the week that I like, and I'll share that with you. And it's also kind of a different is Lindy. Now you're like, who's Lindy? They make industrial gases. So oxygen, you might see the truck at the hospital filling up oxygen tanks for patients, and so they have a medical application. There's welders out there getting acetylene and other types of things to for industrial gases. So not like your gas station gas, but like those types of air gases. And they're pretty much like they have a big moat. They're the only person in this business. I mean, there's some other ones out there, but not like quite like Lindy. They pay a nice dividend also, and it's had this nice pullback. You know me, I'm a bottom fisher. Right down that 50-day moving average, it's down about 12%, and I think it's time for us to back up the truck. Personally, I like them and go to a 5-year chart. You can see it's been a steady upward trend there, and it's one that I like. Let's see, what is their actual dividend? I don't have that on there, but anyways, it is $1.60 per share. So yeah, I think it's around 1.5, 2% ish. So, anyways, just a couple thoughts for you.
Thanks so much for listening. Yeah, just a reminder here at WealthGuard Advisors, we are a registered investment advisory company, and part of that is a fiduciary responsibility for our clients. So if you're interested in anything we've talked about or just want to pick our brains about how you could have a confident and successful retirement, we'd love to sit down and chat with you for a no cost free consultation to see if we could be a good fit. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, make sure to like, share, make a comment. Thank you so much for paying attention. We'll talk to you next week and have a great day. Love you. Bye.